In the real world, there's never going to be 100% deployment in the cloud. There's always going to be a brain somewhere that's not cloud connected, that you need network and you need a service. And what you need to know at this point is the ability to connect that branch to your cloud services.
That's lead tech advocate Kareem Iskander. And if you've listened to our show before, you'll know Kareem from previous episodes. In this episode, Kareem and Cisco Learning Network Community Manager Matt Saunders kick off a new series that we would like to introduce called What's the Deal with That? In this series, Matt and Kareem will discuss what the deal is with a certain topic in tech. And in this episode, they kick things off by discussing the impact that cloud will have on the job market and also touch on how Cisco's cloud certification portfolio provides serious advantages in one's career.
Hey, so Kareem, we've had you on the podcast in the past a couple of times. They've been really great episodes, but this is an opportunity for something new. We're starting a new series here together. This is our first inaugural episode.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome. I'm excited about this idea. Thank you for allowing me to be part of it. Looking forward to more episodes together here.
We're lucky to have you, in all sincerity and all honesty. So this will be our opportunity to really dig in and talk about what's the deal with, and we'll fill in the blanks. And so the first thing I wanted to get your attention on and pick your brain about is, I feel like there's a running joke in the industry or in the community right now, and it goes something like this. Somebody says, what's the point of studying X, fill in the blank, when the cloud is going to take everybody's job? And then all of the network engineers, experienced network engineers in earshot of that remark, laugh pretty wholeheartedly.
I would too.
Yeah. I feel like I get that joke for the most part, but I don't know that I really, truly get it. So, Kareem, what's the deal with that? Why is the cloud going to take away all our jobs?
Well, it's not. Talking about running jokes, you've seen the meme around the cloud is just somebody else's computer, right? That's essentially it, right? At the end of the day, the cloud, what they've done is, and it's great, right? Because it allows you to use somebody else's network, somebody else's compute, somebody else's services to accomplish whatever you're trying to accomplish, right? Whatever your use case is. And in the case of cloud networking, what they've done is they've abstracted layer 1 and layer 2 of your network, right? Which means you don't have access to the physical hardware. You don't have access to plugging in and hearing that like awesome clicking noise of putting in your Cat 5 or Cat 6 cable in the switch. You don't have to deal with that because somebody else took care of it, as well as they've handled layer 2 for you. So you're coming in at layer 3 where you start configuring your network. But if you look at it from a network engineering perspective, it hasn't really changed because it is still a network. You still need to understand routing. You still need to understand how to make your services talk to each other and send packets back and forth. All of the things you need to understand from handling your own and deploying your own network applies in the cloud, from IPv4 to IPv6 to routing protocols to being able to select the right subnet. Like all of the topics that we've been talking about, Matt, for years from a CCNA perspective, they don't just disappear because it's in the cloud now. Like you need to be able to know this. And maybe the nomenclature of the services have changed, right? But it's still the same. It has not changed much. Instead of going in and configuring your router and configuring your routes, you go in and in AWS, you create a VPC. Within that VPC, you still have to have subnets. Subnets on the other side in physical world is still the same. Within your subnets, you need to be able to have these subnets talk to the internet. You go create an internet gateway. It's the same exact thing as putting a router in place on your physical network so you can go out to it, or a firewall that gets out to the internet and have a route to the ISP. That has not changed. Some of the services are abstracted, whether you're a CCNA, CCNP, or a CCIE level. Your knowledge from the networking perspective for routing and switching still heavily used. And it's actually needed because what ends up happening now in today's world is you have these cloud engineers coming from a software background, right, who haven't actually dug into the network, and they don't have that networking knowledge. So actually, if you think about it, that network engineer, the CCNA, who knows how to program and knows how to cloud, essentially, is actually a unicorn in the cloud. Because the majority of the skill sets that you see today accessing the cloud are folks that are in the DevOps, into application building, but they dump that networking portion to the infrastructure engineer. And the infrastructure engineer are typically a combination of your compute and your networking. And if we touch on the networking, it's still what we do here at Cisco and learning and certification. So hasn't changed, just somebody else's.
And so, like, I think back to like when I first started my career, and it's probably similar to you. We were racking and stacking. We were stripping cable, doing punch downs, and putting RJ45 adapters at the end of the Cat5, physically hardwiring things up. Is that work still needed tomorrow?
From the cloud provider perspective, like the AWS and the GCPs and the Azure of the world, absolutely, because whatever software they're running to manage the entire cloud and whatever software they give you access to build your infrastructure, at the core of it is a data center somewhere, and there's a network engineer in that data center actually doing what you just suggested we've done in the past, and they're still configuring all of this, and they're basically opening it up for you to be able to access these services. And so they made it super simple, but the skills are there. They maybe have shifted. But honestly, the other thing that we got to talk about and we got to think about is, unless you're a small business or something, in the real world, there's never going to be 100% deployment in the cloud. There's always going to be a branch somewhere that's not cloud connected, that you need network and you need a service. And what you need to know at this point is the ability to connect that branch to your cloud services. I think this is where we were talking about our Cloud Connect certifications that's coming out, right? This is where we want to be able to test the market and test that network engineer to say, yeah, I know my networking. I also understand the cloud. How do I take that portion of my knowledge from a networking and apply it to the cloud and be able to bridge that where I can create this hybrid multi-cloud networking that we've been talking about? And so you see that in ENCC Blueprint. I think you recently had a webinar around that on the Cisco Learning Network.
The webinar that Kareem just mentioned is called Cisco Multi-Cloud Certifications, and just like Kareem mentioned, it's available on the Cisco Learning Network for free. This webinar discusses why Cisco has come out with these new multi-cloud certifications, provides an overview of what's featured on the exams for each of these certifications, and also goes over the multi-cloud specialist certifications for CCNP. Whether you're an experienced network engineer, cloud architect, or aspiring IT specialist, this webinar will provide you with valuable insights and information to navigate your next certification and potential career move.
Yeah, we had more than just an overview, a bit of a deep dive featuring, Hank Preston. Many folks are going to be familiar with that name from Cisco Live work, etc. Senior principal engineer, architect. I'll botch the title right now, but Joe Clark, who's one of our phenomenal thought leaders in the organization, really kind of leads us, as well as Patrick Gargano, who's working on the courses for Cisco.
Oh, so the rock stars.
Right. Honestly, yeah. I was just there trying to, not get kicked out of the room. It was a great session, and they talked exactly about that, the connectivity aspects of local campus network infrastructure up to the cloud. And so, yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. I don't know if you've had a chance to pull up the exam topics on your end, but I was just looking at the enterprise networking. What exactly do we call this full name? The ENCC certification.
The Enterprise Networking Cloud Connect certification.
Bam. Look at you. Thank you.
I got you.
the exact exam topics in there, and just at the high level domain, yeah, like architecture models. So like what's different there, like just in that first domain, architecture models? What are we talking about there? What's the difference between like where we were, I don't know, however many years back, right, versus where we're at now?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's anything different, right? So as far as my knowledge, and by any means I'm not a networking expert, right? I know enough to get by. But from, what I understand, I'm pretty knowledgeable in the cloud and how the cloud operates. But when you look at the traditional network, it hasn't changed much. It's the same exact things that we've been doing. Do you have a traditional network? Are you running SDA? What is the architecture of your network? That has not changed. You still need to have your routing protocols in place. What has changed, and this is where it's new-ish, is how are we connecting the two entities together, your on-prem and your cloud networking. And that connection between the two, so it kind of acts as one big network, is what we've been having conversations around. What Cisco's doing there. Are you connecting via native IPsec, or are you using something like a Cisco SD-WAN to basically extend that network out to the cloud? And in order for you to use Cisco SD-WAN, you have to have a certain architecture in your network on-prem to be able to allow for SD-WAN, Viptela, or whatever we're calling it, to properly propagate to the cloud. Right. And so this is what we're kind of teaching, is like, how do you take that? What are the different services in SD-WAN that you need to leverage and understand so you can configure your network properly and then be able to connect, and what services you need to deploy on the cloud itself for it to be able to have that like two end-to-end connectivity. Right. But then once you have that, you're still going to have some type of protocol running to be able to route these packets, right? When this is where MPLS comes in play. Are you using BGP? Like all of these terminologies I'm throwing out there, and it sounds like buzzwords, but if you're a CCIE, if you're a network engineer, you've used them, you know what they are, and they still apply in the cloud, right? It's just like we're saying now, we have these services in place that we're going to connect you from dot A to dot B and allow you to have the network extend out to the cloud. So when you deploy your virtual machines, your EC2 instances, whatever it is, you're running a Kubernetes cluster, it would act as one big infrastructure.
So really, it's like you said at the beginning, nothing is really necessarily changing at the core of networking in its essence. What it is just, this is like an evolution of your skills, of your job skills, of the tools in your toolbox and the skills that you need to know. It's almost like change is really the only constant in the universe.
That's exactly right.
It's like the core networking isn't going away, but now there's the cloud service provider connectivity, configuration, administration, management aspects of it all as well. Kind of like the network automation stuff, from, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 years back, right? Networking automation is going to take away, going to kill our jobs. Oh, it actually didn't. But what it is doing is it's allowing network engineers to evolve, to kind of elevate their skill set and their workflows and their productivity, and to, free up their thinking for other solutions.
Exactly. And it opened up your network, so you're not going from CLI and having to run these commands to running an Ansible playbook or a Terraform script to Terraform plan to basically deploy your network from A to Z without having to do anything. And this extends to the cloud too, right? Like those networking automation skills that we've been talking about and we've been testing, we've been devnetting around is still valid in this conversation as well, right?
Cisco DevNet that Kareem just mentioned is Cisco's developer program to help developers and IT professionals who want to write applications and develop integrations with Cisco products, platforms, and APIs. It's a comprehensive ecosystem of product learning and testing, services, and support for developers working at all stages of the enterprise applications, DevOps, infrastructure delivery loop.
Because Cisco SD-WAN has APIs, right? We've talked about this many times. I'm sure there's plenty of webinars and content on Cisco Learning Network around automating your SD-WAN. You take that, you apply your networking skills, you learn a little bit about what to expect from a cloud networking automation. They have Terraform providers, they have APIs. You can automate that connectivity end to end as well. And this is something that I can guarantee that it would be tied together, and you would want to pursue when you're looking to extend to the cloud, because you don't want to do all of this manually. So your automation skills that we've been talking about is just like you said, is just another tool in your tool belt that you can leverage with your networking knowledge, with your CCNA, CCNP, CCIE, and your cloud knowledge to basically do all of this in an automated fashion. So they're all skills, but it's not a replacement. Even if you go in the cloud world and we don't even talk Cisco, they're still teaching on that side the basic of networking. What is an IPv4, how to net mask, how to subnet, like they're there. And this is where, especially early in career, when you're mentoring and you're talking like, oh, should I pursue my CCNA, or should I go for DevNet, or should I go for the cloud practitioner certification? Honestly, it depends on your knowledge. It's what tools do you have? Do you have the tools to know how to configure a basic routing and switching? If the answer is no, then you better go and take CCNA, because that's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. And we've updated our blueprints to make it relevant in today's world. So the protocols have changed. Focus on IPv6 now versus IPv4. Not saying IPv4 does not exist. We still ask, but like if you look at the blueprint, there's a bunch of IPv4, IPv6 questions. It's different. You need to understand, how to manage that, how to deal with IPv6s, because some networks will require it. And so it's super relevant. It just doesn't go away. I can't emphasize on your basic knowledge. Again, another example is like you learn the alphabets. You can speak and write. Just because you spent hours and hours learning how to do ABCs, that doesn't mean that it's not a good starting point, right? You need to learn your ABCs.
It almost honestly makes the joke that I started off the topic with, the conversation with, feel like dark humor. It's almost like, ha 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 ha. No, my job's not going away. I just have to learn new things now.
Right. And I'm more relevant. I'm more of a unicorn in the cloud world, because guess what? I'm coming from a networking background, and a plus I have automation. So when I'm sitting in that room and designing my cloud infrastructure, I probably know more than a lot of the cloud folks that are in that room, because I've done this. I've done the unboxing, I've taken the switch out, I've plugged it in, I've connected it to a router, I've put on a firewall. I've also been able to manage all of that. I've configured them, so you've seen the abstraction and you've done the abstraction that happens in the cloud. So you know how that runs underneath.
Exactly. Honestly, I can't wait to get this episode out to the community, because I really want to hear what folks have to say back to us on this conversation.
As Matt just mentioned, we would love to know what you think about this conversation between Matt and Kareem about how cloud is impacting careers. So please leave a comment for us on this episode, or visit the discussion thread on the Cisco Learning Network that features this episode, which we will leave a link to in the description. And share your thoughts on the emergence of cloud in Cisco's certification portfolio, or the IT industry in general.
Yeah, I was reading a piece earlier about the difference between publishing content and being in a community. Publishing content being a one-way thing, you get a little perspective from one person, and then boom, that content's published. Being a part of a community, you're opening up conversation and you're expanding the conversation and you're getting feedback, etc. And to me, that's the most exciting part about this particular episode and this topic. I can't wait to hear more from folks that listen and give us their perspective and their feedback in return.
I would love to hear about some feedback from the community on topics that you and I would cover, right? What's the deal with X? Just give us some ideas, and what is it that's top of mind for you from our community to guide us through this. Happy to do research, happy to talk from an SME perspective on some of these topics, and I'm always happy talking to you, Matt, so that's the easy part.
So the feeling is definitely mutual, and the good news is we happen to know a few people that also can talk about some stuff.
Right, so if you want to come on this and tell us what's the deal with whatever, we happy to host you.
And I'll do an episode just on my power smoothies for network engineers.
Sounds awesome.
And what's the deal with that? Hey, but before we do kind of wrap up and let folks carry on with their days or their nights, wherever they're listening, whatever time of the day, we'd be remiss not to talk about the cloud-related content making its way, just even more than just specifically the content, just, the approach we're taking inside of Cisco U and you and the team are taking to bring all this content together and make it make sense for folks and make it relative.
If you're not already familiar with Cisco U, it's a learning subscription from Cisco dedicated to helping teams and learners streamline their learning journeys through guidance and personalization. With an AI ML engine, Cisco U recommends content and provides personalized feedback through assessments that validate skills and guide learners to and through their personalized content.
Yeah, we'll drop the link here in the description of this podcast, but definitely go check out everything that I talked to you about, the basics of all of this. We have training on Cisco U around our ENCC. By the time this episode goes out, I'm pretty sure it's going to be on Cisco U. It's destined to release the end of October. The other thing is, when you don't have a subscription to Cisco U, it's all good. We have a bunch of free content on Cisco U that you can check out. We have a set of tutorials dedicated to our ENCC certification exam. If you want to just see what it's about, and even if you want to just play with Cloud Network, just go check out some of the tutorials that us tech advocates here at LNC released and provide us some feedback. What else do you want to see? We're happy to contribute and create content there as well if this is something that you're interested in.
Yeah, I feel like the tutorials that you and the team have been putting together are currently an underappreciated component and aspect of what's brewing inside of Cisco U. So just a quick, kudos to you and the team.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, so that's the deal with why cloud computing and cloud networking is taking away all of the network engineer job. I can properly laugh at that now.
Well, that's it for our first episode of What's the Deal with That, featuring Community Manager Matt Saunders and Lead Tech Advocate Kareem Iskander. If you'd like to learn more about Cisco's cloud certification portfolio, please visit the Cisco Learning Network at learningnetwork.cisco.com. There you can find all kinds of resources like study guides, training videos, exam topics, and an entire community that can help you in your learning journey. Please subscribe to the Cisco Learning Network podcast to hear more news about Cisco's certification portfolio and stories from others who are on their certification paths. Finally, be sure to check out Cisco U to find courses that can help you earn a certification or simply learn new skills to enhance your career.